He's been called a not very nice guy, an underrated songwriter, or an underrated songwriter, yes, and the ugliest woman on earth. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome living legend Alice Cooper.
Thank you. You're worthy. If you could imagine how many times I get "we're not worthy" a day in every airport, and I try to pretend like it's the first time I've seen it. Oh, how clever! Oh, that's really good.
Well, now the other day you were talking to James Randi, and it's actually a little weird following him. In fact, I was following him earlier on the escalator today. But you've said before how you wanted to present a rock and roll villain for all the heroes out there.
Yeah, well, the rock and roll was lacking a villain. We had the Beatles and the Rolling Stones and the Doors and all these bands, and they were all rock and roll heroes to me. And I kept looking for the villain. I kept saying, where are the villains if we got all these heroes and we didn't have one? And so I said, well, I'll gladly be the Moriarty to rock and roll, or the Captain Blood, or the Captain Hook, or the whatever it is, And I looked like a villain. I didn't look like a hero. So I immediately said, well, what would you do if you took, say, like, the Black Queen and Barbarella, and then added whatever happened to Baby Jane, and then added rock and roll to that? That would be a pretty bizarre-looking villain right there. And right then, honestly, my whole idea was, if the Beatles walked into a room, everybody takes a step forward and goes, oh, it's the Beatles. Or Bob Dylan, oh, it's Bob Dylan. Our band would walk in a room, everybody would take a step backwards. They go, oh, it's Alice. And that was really our image. And but we needed the villain. We needed the villain in rock and roll. And I always liked the idea that Alice was definitely untrustworthy on stage. And at the same time, I didn't mind him slipping on a banana peel. Because there was a certain amount of Clouseau in him also, So there has to be humor in your villain, or it doesn't work.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Did you have any particular influences, like any particular classic horror stars?
I grew up on, when I was a kid in Detroit, our parents would drop us off at the Easttown Theater, and it would be The Brain That Wouldn't Die, The Creature from the Black Lagoon, and It Came from Outer Space, all in black and white movies. And we were there all day watching these movies. And to me, it was just my favorite type of movie. I could sit there all day, and I still can sit there and watch those movies all day. So I think that my babysitter was that. And then later on, The Twilight Zone, and all the sort of thriller with Boris Karloff and those shows. I always kind of like, and it's a strange thing about how stories are written. As much as I like Hannibal Lecter, and as much as I like Darth Vader, it's not satisfying unless the villain gets it in the end. There's just something about it that is not satisfying, and so I had to design my show that Alice got it in the end. He'd either get hung or get his head cut off or something, and then come back. And the villain had to come back, so you knew he was going to come back again.
Cool. Did you... Now, you were telling me earlier that you were close to Vincent Price.
Well, we were very lucky to get Vincent Price. When we did Welcome to My Nightmare, we sat there and we said, we need a voice of the curator of the Spider Museum. We created the Spider Museum in Alice's Nightmare. Who would that be? Who could we get? And we thought, and of course, who's got the most distinctive voice in the business was Vincent Price. And I said, do you think we could get Vincent Price? We gave him a call out of Bob Ezrin and I, and he says, I'll be right over. And I went, really? Honestly, I was starstruck. I went, really? And he came in, and he had so much fun. He says, can I rewrite some of this? And I went, yeah, whatever you want to write in there. I think he did it in 2 takes, the whole thing on Black Widow. And we still use that at the beginning of our show, even right now. But I keep forgetting that we did a video with him in Toronto, a video version of Welcome to My Nightmare, and we shot with him for 4 days. And there's all this lost video that I forgot about that we saw recently where he sings a song. And, I said, where did that come from? I forgot all about that. Of course, I might have been drinking at the time. I'm not sure. Might have been drinking. But he was so much fun to work with, and he was exactly what you think. When it came time to being the scary guy, I said, don't be gentle with me. I was on a leash. He had me on a leash walking me through. And he was I said, no, don't be gentle with me. I said, understand that they're your curator. You're showing me around this, this spider museum, and I'm the victim of yours. So treat me like that. And it was really good. He really came out great.
Speaking of Welcome to My Nightmare, and I know your most recent release is a direct sequel. Did you ever think you'd be returning to that evolving mythology? Or?
I started out being a sequel, and then I realized that I didn't really want to make it a sequel. I wanted to make it another nightmare.
Yeah.
Let's turn it into another nightmare instead of trying to pick up where Stephen left off.
Oh, yeah.
I said, we'll keep Stephen in there because Stephen is people always ask me, who's Stephen? Stephen is like everybody's little 7-year-old boy that won't grow up. And everybody's got one. If you notice what you wear on weekends, guys, you wear baseball hats and shorts and tennis shoes. It's exactly what you wore when you were 7. Same with girls. It's sort of like we will not release that 7-year-old boy. That's why we like going on roller coaster rides. That's why we like scary movies. That's why we like, silly movies, funny movies, because there's a part of us that don't want to grow up. And I think that has a lot to do with the fantasy world. And hold on to that, okay? I mean, the people that grow up and lose that 7-year-old boy or 7-year-old girl are, it's too bad. It's sort of the end of their life. So Stephen is that 7-year-old boy. And, and part Nightmare, I got with Bob Ezrin again, and I said, what I want to do is I want to bring in themes from Nightmare, just sort of showing up in these new songs, but I don't want to keep referring back to that nightmare, because that was a nightmare. If you have a nightmare, you have one nightmare one night and an entirely different one the next night. I know if you do, I do. But why not give Alice an entirely new nightmare? Alice's nightmare would be disco. I mean, that was a nightmare for Alice, So we wrote a song, Disco Bloodbath Boogie Fever, which had every element of disco in it. Well, Alice would hate that. Anything to do with technology, Alice would hate, So I kept including all those things in there. 9-to-5 job, Alice would hate. So we had another song about that. And that's what that nightmare was made up of. But it was really fun working with Ezrin again, Bob Ezrin. And a lot of these new songs are going to be in the next show. So we're going to put them back into the show.
Excellent. Whenever I listen to your concept albums, I always imagine them as like a little stop-motion animation, like a Tim Burton or Mad Monster Party, or something, or even Brothers Quay, something like that.
Tim Burton and I are kind of joined at the hips in a lot of ways. When I worked on Dark Shadows with him, we realized that we sat and had dinner one night, Johnny Depp and myself and him, and we talked about what our influences were, and they were all exactly the same influences. I mean, every horror movie I brought up, was something that they were, involved in. Even Dark Shadows was a show that we'd run home from school and turn on and watch to see what was going to happen next. And what a weird idea to do a vampire soap opera in the 70s. That was such a ridiculous... How did that ever get greenlit, to do that? And yet it was the most infectious thing. You couldn't wait to see what was going to happen next. It was really not... Vampires were not big then. It took a while for them to get back into style. So that was really a gamble that really paid off. All of us referred back to that and said, well, let's go back and get that. But let's modernize the whole thing.
Yeah, I was reading in an interview recently in Horror Hound magazine. They said that you had a cut scene where Barnabas looked at you and said, "He's one of us."
Oh yeah, there was a scene where after he watches me perform, Barnabas is looking at me and goes, "He's one of us." In other words, I'm a vampire. Some of the scenes in the movie are really, and Johnny Depp is really funny. Great guitar player, by the way. He came up and played with us 2 or 3 times on stage. The guy's a great guitar player. He could play with anybody. In fact, he's played with Marilyn Manson. He's played with me. He's played with Slash. And he gets on stage and he's kind of very shy back there. and we did a show in London, a place called the 100 Club, that was literally 100 people could fit into. And we got up and everyone was crammed in, and we were just a cover band that night. Whatever song anybody yelled out, we would do. We were not Alice Cooper that night. And I invited him up on stage. I said, "We have a great blues player, Johnny D. from Kentucky." He had a cowboy hat come up, and he started playing, and pretty soon you could see the girls start noticing. They went, "It's Johnny Depp! It's Johnny Depp!" But he was a great guitarist, and he's sort of like now invited to any time to come and play on tour with us. I told him, I said, "If this whole acting thing doesn't work out for you,
Yeah, you've actually been in a lot of movies. Any unusual film experiences? Well, that's kind of a dumb question. I'm sure you're full of them. So.
Prince of Darkness was interesting because of the fact that I went down there just to watch John Carpenter film. He was filming in downtown L.A., and he says, "Do you want to come down and watch it?" I said, "Sure." And I stood there, and he says, "Hey, what would be great? If you were like one of the zombies, one of the the street people, with like a knit hat on." I went, "Oh, okay, that'd be great." And then he pan around in there. I said, "Well, somebody will notice." And he says, "Well, what might be good is if you were the leader of the zombies, And I went, "Oh, okay." I said, "What does that mean?" He said, "Oh, just 3 or 4 scenes, that's all." He goes, "You know that thing you do with a mic stand through the guy on stage?" "Yeah." He said, "You think you put a bicycle through a guy's chest?" I went, "Yeah." It's okay, we could do that. And pretty soon I was like in the whole movie. It was through the whole movie. I just went there to watch the movie. And now if you pick up the movie and the thing, I'm on the cover. And I told him, I said, "I don't want to get paid. I don't want to get paid. I just wanted to, be a part of a John Carpenter movie." So it was fun. A lot of the other movies, I end up playing either an Alice part. You play Alice yourself, or you play... I always tell them, make me the school teacher or something. Make me the librarian, or make me something like that. But it was fun to play Suck in Suck, the movie Suck. I got to play a bartender, and I got to be a very bad vampire in that one. That was fun. I got to be a really good vampire in that.
Are there any other classic monsters you'd be interested in playing at some point?
Well, I mean, I think that I've already played Jekyll and Hyde for all my career. It's funny. People always ask me my favorite horror movies of all time, and it's not a surprising list, probably. Suspiria, is one of the great, really creepy movies of all time. It's just creepy. You get done watching that, you want to go take a shower or something. It's yick. And Argento's movies are like that. They're just different from anybody else's. Movies like The Haunting, the original Haunting, with Julie Harris. Yeah. That movie scared me because you never saw anything. You never saw a monster. You felt it. And it was around you. It was always around you. Another one that surprises people was Salem's Lot. David Soul's, the one that Tobe Hooper did, was one of the scariest movies ever made.
Yeah.
And people never give that a chance because they go, "Oh, David Soul, well, Starsky and Hutch." I said, "Have you seen the movie? The first time you see Barlow, it takes your breath away. Because, they keep talking about Mr. Barlow. Mr. Barlow would be happy to see, he'll be loving it." And then at one point, the whole screen is Mr. Barlow, and it's the most evil vampire you've ever seen in your life. When I first saw it, I went, "Oh!" And I went, "This is great. And this is really good." And the kids scratching on the windows, and teacher, You know, I mean, there were 20 great scenes in that movie. If you haven't given that movie a chance recently, go back and see it. And the music in it is what makes it really good. And whoever did the music really did a great job in that movie. But Tobe Hooper, that's one of his best movies.
Yeah, I agree. That to me is what I think of when I think of a horror vampire.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's a terrifying vampire. Then they did a remake, and Rob Lowe's remake, and it wasn't Rob's fault, but it just wasn't scary. The vampire actually had a cape on, you know, in a medallion. You went, oh, come on, you know. Give me something that really looks undead. And Barlow was definitely undead.
Have you seen any recent horror films that you've enjoyed?
You know, there's a couple that I thought were really unique as far as the commercial ones that came out. I thought Silent Hill was really different from anything else. I know that I didn't play the game because I don't play video games, but if you haven't played the video game and you see that movie for the first time, it's definitely different than any horror movie you've ever seen. It's got all these elements that you've never seen before, which I look for in a horror movie. You know, if I've seen, oh yeah, and it's plot number 28, you know, plot number 67. That one I couldn't tell what was going on, and that's made it good. I also liked 30 Days a Night.
Yeah.
Because the vampires were not elegant. I mean, they didn't bite you in the neck. They just ripped your arm off, you know. And they were not slow. They were quick. You know, they were fast. So it went against the grain. And the whole idea that you're 30 days without any light where they can just prey on you at any time made it a very claustrophobic film, which I kind of liked that. I thought it was really good. Part 2, again, didn't quite live up, you know, to part 1. Rob Zombie films are great because I mean they're if you know Rob, you get the sense of humor in all of Rob's films.
Yeah.
And he's such a hillbilly. I mean, you know. He's like, you know, Rob is like my little brother. So we toured together and everything. He's probably my best friend in the whole business. So when I go to see his movies, I go, do you have to swear so much in your movies? I mean, you really don't have to swear that much, do you really? Yeah, okay.
Yeah. So, I mean, you know, also I was reading how you had made a comment that sometimes it's, if you were like playing like a Shakespearean play, yeah, either way it's blood and guts. Basically.
Well, you know, I when I became Christian, it was one of these things where like I got in my own conflict was how can I be Christian and be Alice Cooper? How can I be Christian and be Alice Cooper? And it was like a real definite conflict with me. And then I started realizing. People would come, oh, you know, I don't know about this Alice Cooper thing. And I thought, if I were playing Macbeth, would it be all right? Oh, yeah, Macbeth is fine. Have you read Macbeth? Have you read most of Shakespeare's stuff? Blood and guts and incest and occult and witches and this. And I said, that's fine, right? Oh, yeah, it's fine. I said, I'm fine with Alice. Alice will be fine. You know, you know. I think people by now get Alice. They understand. In the very beginning, it was very funny to be Alice Cooper because apparently I was responsible for the Vietnam War, JFK's assassination. I mean, everything you can imagine. People ask me where Hoffa's buried. I don't know. Well, what's going on at Area 51? Why do you think I know that? I don't know. You know. But I think when people finally I think if you stick around long enough, you become woven into the fabric of Americana. Same with Ozzy and same with other characters, I think, that were in the beginning young and dangerous, whereas now we're sort of older and treacherous. You know.
Well, I'd like to, if you don't mind, take some audience questions.
Sure.
Yeah.
No math, okay?
Okay. We're going to start lines on this side and this side. Just look for the people with the mics. So. Thanks again.
Oh, yeah. Carnival of Souls. That was the one I was thinking of. That was another really creepy movie.
You know,
that was Tim Burton, and I had that one in common.
You know, that's a weird, because that's such a one and done movie. It's like everybody involved with that. It's like they shot that movie and then it was just like they never did anything else.
I must have seen the movie when I was very young, and I watched it, and it just stayed with me because it was really like a nightmare. You know, it was that grainy, and it was kind of cheaply done.
Yeah.
And it just stays with you, that movie does. And nobody's ever tried to remake it, I don't think, you know.
Yeah, they did, actually.
They did?
I haven't seen it.
I can't imagine it. If it's in color, it doesn't work.
Yeah, and there's few things creepier than something staring in your window, you know.
Yeah.
So.
Well. Okay.
All right, let's start over here.
Hi, my name is Steven, and I'm a freak. I actually am also a Christian. I wrote a book called God Loves the Freaks, saying that it's okay to be Christian and weird and crazy and all this stuff, and I would love to give you this copy. And she's going to bring that up to you.
Thank you.
And that's really it. I thank
I
you
will
for
be
sharing your faith.
interested in reading it. I had the greatest experience the other day. Now, I don't know if he's here or not, but I'm in line signing autographs. And a guy comes up to me, and he hands me a card, and he says, "Hi, I'm the vice president of the American Atheist Society. We're trying to get prayer out of schools. We're trying to get this." And I looked at him, I said, "Boy, did you come to the wrong place." And he looked at me, and I went, "Hi." I said, "You know, I'm Christian. I actually teach Bible study sometimes." And there was like the guy, do you ever see that cartoon in Bugs Bunny where the guy turns plaid and he turns like blue and green? And I just went, "We should really talk." "I gotta go."
Hello, Mr. Cooper.
Hi.
My name's Brian. I just want to say thank you. You've been a huge influence on me and on my band and my songwriting.
Oh, thank you.
And I just wanted to know if you brought your clubs, and do you want to play on Monday morning?
You know what? I am, I agree. I have an addictive personality. I mean, I didn't have any idea that the first time I had a beer, it was going to be one of a million. You know, I haven't had a drink now in 30 years, but I traded alcohol for golf, right? Now, what people don't understand is I had to be like a closet golfer, you know, because nobody wanted to know that I played golf. And all of a sudden, Iggy would say, "You know, I play golf." You know, Lou Reed says, "You know, I'm hitting the ball a little bit right." And I'm going, these people that you would never expect to play golf. Most metal bands have 3 guys that play golf. You know, of course, most metal bands also have a Carpenter's album somewhere in their collection. You know, we always kind of have that one little nasty secret that nobody knows about. But almost every band I know plays golf now. So you can imagine, Bob Dylan plays golf with Neil Young.
No.
I want to be in that foursome right there. You know.
Now, it's Bob Dylan who said that you were one of the great underrated songwriters around.
That was really a very nice thing. I didn't even know he knew I existed. You know, I mean, it's one of those things where when you get somebody like a Bob Dylan, John Lennon's favorite song was "Elected." You know, because he thought that it was, and that was a great story. He came in, he listened to the song before we released it, and he'd come in the next day and listen to it, and finally on the third day he listened to it, and he walks by and he goes, "Oh, great song, Alice, you know, great record." You know, I said, "Oh, thanks, John." And he takes about 2 more steps, and he goes, "Paul would have done it better." And I went, "Well, yeah. I mean, Paul's going to do everything better than me. I understand that." I said, "But you like the record?" He said, "No, I love the record. It's a great record." You know, because he was very politically motivated, whereas I was looking at the elections as being much funnier. You know, but he got the joke, though. But it was very nice of Bob Dylan to say that, you know. I think he had heard "Only Women Bleed," and he didn't know that I was capable of writing that kind of song. And so that and 2 or 3 other songs got his attention. I think "Generation Landslide" and things like that.
Yeah.
You know. But that's nice to get those people on your side.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Do you like school?
What's that?
Do you like school?
Do I like snakes?
School.
School! Okay, I was Ferris Bueller. when I saw Ferris Bueller, I went, how did they know about my life? This is me. I had the same thing. My sister hated me because I got away with everything. You have to remember what happened now. Here I am in high school. I'm on the track team and cross-country team that's unbeatable. We're 72-0. I mean, we were like unbeatable. We had 5 guys that were running 4:30 in the mile in high school. So we were like, jock heroes at the school. And then I had the best band in town. I had the Spiders, which were opening for the Yardbirds and the Who and people like that. I had my high school wired. The girls were doing our homework, and if a guy wanted to beat me up, I'd say, okay, let's talk. Come here. I'd say, look, I weigh 98 pounds. I said, this is not going to make you a hero by beating me up. What girl do you want to go out with? And he'd say, well, gee, Bunny Thompson over there. And I said, okay. I go over to Bunny and say, Bunny, yeah. I'll get you into the show this week. This guy's going to kill me if you don't go out with him. And and pretty soon, you're set up this weekend. They go, oh, thanks, man. It's great. So I could talk my way in and out of just about anything. So when I saw Ferris Bueller, I was Ferris Bueller. I loved high school. It was, to me, the greatest social event of my life.
I recently saw you on Top Gear, which I'm a big fan of. I'm guessing a few other people are here, too. And you mentioned that you often restore and customize classic cars. Is there a particular one that's your favorite or that you've kept for personal use?
I have a 66 Fastback, Mustang Fastback. It's the Bullet car. Remember Bullet? It's basically that car. And that's my daily driver. That's the one I drive every day. I was born in Detroit, so DNA is... my DNA is in motor car. I've got horsepower in my blood, and to this day, I can't drive past a muscle car without looking at it and going, I could restore that. That looks pretty good. Yeah, I drive mostly muscle cars and restore them and dry them. So does Jeff Beck. Jeff Beck and Billy Gibbons. They actually put these cars together. 32 Fords that are the most beautiful things you've ever seen in your life. So there's a lot of musicians that are into cars.
Hi, I wanted to ask, one of my favorite of your concept albums is still Last Temptation. I want to know how that came about, especially the collaboration with Neil Gaiman and the comic book that went along with it.
Yeah, that was one of the first, when I became Christian, that was one of the very first projects I worked on. And I thought, let me write something here that's sort of like Shadow's Something Wicked This Way Comes. About a little boy, he's tempted to go join the circus. The circus was a metaphor for the world, of course, and the circus master was Satan. And the little kid decides not to join, which enrages, the guy. So, and it was such a good story that I was telling Neil Gaiman about it, and Neil said, well, let's write the story first, and then write the songs around the story. And I went, that's a great idea. And Neil is, great. By the way, if you want to call him, you have to call him after the sun goes down and before the sun comes up. 'Cause he literally is a vampire. The guy sleeps all day and gets up all night. But, working with Gaiman, and then, of course, getting Stan Lee involved, with Marvel Comics is, how great is that? To get those guys involved. And the cool thing about it is when you're a Marvel comic hero, they draw you with great abs. Never had such a great body in my life. I had shoulders and a chest and abs, and my nose was straight, and I was, hey, I'm Alice Cooper, So I saw Stan the other day, and I thanked him. I said, man, I wish I could look like the way you draw me, But the idea, and then they made it into a book form, but it really was a really nice piece of work without giving up any of the hard rock at all. I mean, it definitely had some of the coolest, nastiest songs I've ever written in it. And some of the best storytelling I think I ever did was in Last Temptation. So that's one of my very favorite projects, really. And I'd work with Neil again anytime. Neil's great. I'm sure he's been here. Sure Neil Gaiman's been here.
Hi. How would you describe your music to somebody who's not familiar with it in a way that would maybe get them past their perceptions of it just based on their impressions of your image?
Yeah, well, I mean, Alice Cooper's always been a hard rock band. We've never been a heavy metal band. I think heavy metal is just hard rock on steroids, with a different attitude. We've always been a hard rock band, and I've always been very influenced by storytellers, like Ray Davies from the Kinks, or even Bob Dylan, who tells stories in his songs. So I tell stories in little fragments. Each song has got a story in it. If you were going to try to explain it, I don't know. Talking about music is like dancing about architecture. It's hard to explain what it is until you hear it and just go, well, it's hard rock. Now, I've always been influenced by a lot of Beatle melody lines. So Ozzy has, most guys from our generation learned a lot from the Beatles. And so you'll hear a lot of great melody lines going on in the song, even though a lot of the storylines are kind of Twilight Zone-y. They got twist endings, they've got this and that. But you're very rarely going to find anything that's not interesting in the songs. I try to keep them pretty interesting, You have to hear it. I think you have to hear it. Most people that hear it and don't know what to expect usually like it.
Hi, I was glad you brought up stories because I'm wondering if there's any chance of us seeing a reprint of the awesome book, $1 Billion Babies, and if you might be considering a new story with the latest chapter of your life.
I'm sorry, I didn't quite get all that.
If you might be considering a new book with the latest chapter of your career.
Oh, yeah, you mean, right? Well, the last book we wrote was Golf Monster, which was sort of like how I gave up alcohol for golf, even though this book was actually nothing about that at all, couldn't think of it. But, yeah, it seems like every 10 years you should write what happened in the last 10 years. But albums are like that. If I go back and I listen to albums, Lace and Whiskey, or if I listen to Brutal Planet, or if I listen to $1 Billion Babies or Love It to Death, those albums are almost like novels because it's almost where you were at that time. I listen to the lyrics and I go, oh, okay, and I can see what I was thinking about in that. Then you go to the next album and you realize that 28 albums, you pretty much told your life story, in those albums. So writing books is kind of making it more, more explicit. And I've kind of done that with Golf Monster, but I always say I can't tell the whole story till about 8 more people die. There's too many people involved that I can't really talk about.
Hey, Alice. First, I just wanted to thank you just for introducing me to hard rock as a kid and for scaring the hell out of my parents in the process.
Thank you. It was my job.
When I was 13, my cousin actually took me to see one of your shows. It was my first concert ever. Doc and Warrant and Slaughter played with you in upstate New York in Darien Lake. I saw you 10th row, and it was amazing. But my question for you is, what was it like working with Twisted Sister for the Be Cruel to Your School music video?
Dee is a very smart guy, very, very intelligent guy. And when I first saw Dee, it took me back a bit. I went, what is that? Because he's bigger than life. He's 19 feet tall, and he's got hair out to here, and he had this garish orange, and he was a giant clown that came to life. And he's got a huge voice. And he's like me. When you get on stage, it's absolutely another person. He turns into this character, this Twisted Sister Dee Snider character. And it was pretty overwhelming. So when we got together, he says, well, of course, I was a huge influence on him and everything like that, so let's do something together. So Be Cruel to Your School, was something that was perfect for that. And it was really when I was just coming back being sober. It was like one of my first things that I did sober. In fact, I don't know if any of you have seen the Masterpiece Monster Dog. Masterpiece. If you go into what used to be your Blockbuster, and it has like the 30 worst turkeys of all time. I'm in 3 of them. Sergeant Pepper, Monster Dog, though, was one of those movies. It was in the same situation. I just got sober, and I told Shep, my manager, I said, I want to do something that I have to get up in the morning and I have to work without, and know that I can work without alcohol. So we took this movie in Spain that they promised me would only be released in the Philippines. You know, and don't worry, nobody's ever going to see this. But I really had to get up in the morning, do the makeup, get in, and I was actually the lead role in it. I had to be the hero. And it was a lot of work. I mean, it was really, but I found that I could work sober. And that was really a very big deal for me to work sober. But the movie was, the whole movie was British. All the cast, everybody in Spain. When we saw the movie, they went back in and overdubbed all the voices in like a broken Spanish. So the very first thing, I'm sitting in the cab and I look at the girl and I go, "Hey, how you doing over there?" You know? And I went, "Do I sound like that?" You know? And they had redubbed everybody's perfect English in broken English, which I thought was actually even made the movie more bizarre than it was. But it was in that period when I was just learning, getting my sea legs back without alcohol. So yeah.
Hello. What was your favorite film to film and why?
Favorite film of all time?
That you were in.
Oh, that I was in. Oh, okay. Well, you know, I liked Suck a lot. I thought Suck had a great sense of humor to it. And it was funny. Actually, I had to learn a lot of lines. You know, I had to convince this kid that being a vampire was much cooler than what he was doing. You know, and I think out of all the movies that where I actually got to act a little bit was that movie. There were other movies that were better movies. I mean, Wayne's World was a lot of fun, but that was... Wayne's World was just having fun, though. I got there to Wayne's World. We were supposed to do the song, just the song. And when I got there, you know, Michael comes over to me and he says, "Okay, Alice, look, I know you act." He said, "But could you just handle a couple of lines for us?" I went, "Sure, yeah, no problem." He hands me like 8 pages of dialogue. And I said, "When are we shooting this?" And he goes, "About half an hour." So the whole thing about, you know, Algonquins and the socialist, we were winging it. I mean, I was just like, whatever I could think of, I was saying, you know. And then on top of it, Michael and Dana are there trying everything they could do to make me laugh. You know, and I found a spot between them and delivered every line, and I kind of defied them. I said, you know, "You can't make me laugh. You can't do it. But you should hear the We're Not Worthy thing that goes on and on. It goes on for 10 minutes. And it is the most vile thing you've ever heard in your life. I mean, they went as deep as they could get. You know, "We are dog," you know, and on and on. I still did not laugh, so I beat Michael Myers on that one.
You admit you have no recollection of recording it, but having heard it back, do you not think that Dada would make a good horror movie? And if investors call you about the Phoenix Coyotes tomorrow, do you pick up the phone?
Listen, Dada was one of the albums that we did during our blackout period. There's 3 albums that I did out of the 28 that I have no memory of. I don't remember doing Special Forces, Zipper Catches Skin, and most of Dada. You know, I remember that when Ezrin was there, I had to be pretty much connected, you know, because Ezrin demanded that. And I remember that Formerly Warmer was the creepiest song I think we ever did. And that there was a movie. That song was a movie about the old man that lives in the attic and who is he? And what are they feeding him? You know, that's one song that stands out as being just creepy as hell. I always tell people, don't listen to that song by yourself in a dark room, you know. But yeah, that album, I should go back and revisit it, you know. But there are certain songs, I mean, how weird is it you don't remember writing, recording, or touring with an entire album? That's pretty weird. I want to go back and listen to those songs now and probably re-record some of them, you know, knowing what I'm doing. But those are the blackout, and all my fans, those are my fans' favorite albums, of course. You know.
I actually really like the title track, Dada. It's very creepy.
Yeah, it is. It's very odd. I don't know what headspace we were in at that point, but I mean, Dick Wagner and I wrote most of the songs with Bob Ezrin, and we were in Toronto, and yeah, Dada, the track itself was just weird, you know. It wasn't like anything else we had done.
Or anybody else, really, at the time that I can think of.
Yeah, it is. It's got a weird mantra to it that's it's very odd. I'm almost afraid to listen to it.
Can you tell us a little bit about your experience on The Muppet Show?
The Muppets probably why most of you are here. And I don't blame you. I got a call, do you want to do The Muppet Show? Now, I watched The Muppet Show like everybody else and laughed my head off, you know, at it. And I went, oh, man, I'm the scary guy, you know. I don't want to go do The Muppet Show. That's going to water down everything that I've kind of built up. And then I looked at who was on the week before. It was Vincent Price. And the week before that was Christopher Lee. And I went, okay, I'm not as scary as those guys. I can do the show. It was the most fun thing I ever did in my life. We did it in London. We did a week of rehearsal. And the very odd thing about doing the Muppet Show is that you get so used to talking to the puppets that they become extremely real to you, you know. And here's Miss Piggy over here. You know, we're rehearsing. I think we were doing You and Me. And I said, you know, it would be funny. I said, if you put your head on my shoulder, you know, and it was just kind of like really... What would be funny would be... Because I realized I was talking to a piece of felt, you know. But she's going, oh, that's a good idea, you know, that's right, you know. And after a while, I realized she was coming on to me. You know. I was going, you know, hey. I had little hoof prints on me, you know, all over. And Kermit was getting angry. And I was looking, you know, I go, hey, it's not me, Kermit. I mean, she's a pig. I mean, you know. But I probably had more fun on that show than any other show. And almost every single autograph I did, somebody mentioned the Muppets. So I'm glad I did it. And I would do it again a million times. It's when, you know, Jim Henson was alive then, and Frank Oz was on the thing. And so, I mean... we had so much fun working on that. And there was no idea that was out of bounds. You know, if you said it would be great if an arrow hit right near Kermit and stuck the contract to the wall, you know, they said, okay, and they went out and got an archer. And literally did it. I mean, you know, a guy really stuck the arrow right there. So it was great. It was working with some really creative people. Yeah.
Okay, there we go. Hi, Mr. Cooper.
Hi. Mr. Cooper, I sound like a math teacher.
I have a question regarding your faith. You've talked about in past interviews about how you feel judgment, you know, from the Christian side, obviously. I mean, I know that too. I'm dressed as a Harry Potter character with blood on me. Of course, they're going to think I'm some kind of devil worshiper. But also, I've wanted to know if you've ever received judgment from people who weren't necessarily Christians. I know I just got chewed out by some guy just for wearing my Fans for Christ badge. So I was just wondering if you've ever...
Oh, are you kidding? When I came out, 1968, I felt like Jack Nicholson. Wait till they get a load of me, you know. There was nothing going on like Alice Cooper. I mean, we were in we were wearing slips that were ripped up with blood all over them and makeup smeared. We didn't, you know, it was like pure horror show. We were more Clockwork Orange than rock and roll. And this was when, you know, Donnie and Marie were out there. And honestly, we shook everybody up. We scared everybody to death. And yeah, I was PTA. There was no safe haven for Alice Cooper at that point. When you get a hit record, it all changes. All of a sudden now, you are what is happening. You know, the worst thing you can do is give somebody that looked like Alice a hit record, and then 10 more. So all of a sudden now we were the style, Yeah, we played in London. We got banned in England. I mean, it was the greatest thing ever happened. Mary Whitehouse, who was wherever she was a head of something over there, and Leo Absey decided that Alice Cooper was the worst thing that could ever happen to the British youth, And of course, the record went right to #1. And we sold out Wembley like that. We were sending her flowers. We were sending him cigars, And they kept going, why is he, does he understand that we're banning him? And we go, yeah, it's great. Thank you. Thank you, We can't thank you enough. Finally, the British public stood up and said, how dare you tell us what we can see and what we can't see? And we showed up. And we played England. And the thing about it was that as soon as they saw the show, they realized, oh, this is really good. This is like vaudeville, only some kind of warped vaudeville, but it's vaudeville and it's really fun to watch because the music coordinated with the visuals and it all worked really well together. It wasn't just kind of schlock, it was really rehearsed. And without giving up the hard-edge rock and roll to it. So everybody liked that. As soon as we got done doing Welcome to My Nightmare in London, you'd walk down the street and there were kids with top hats on, like black makeup under their eyes, and all of a sudden there was this movement, this goth movement that was happening. But as far as, you can't change people's minds if they're closed-minded and they've already judged you before they know you. You never. That's going to go on forever, and it started at the very beginning of time. So that's never going to change. So you just, as long as you know who you are, and you're happy with it and everything like that. I say as long as you're not hurting anybody, you're fine. Now, see, I wouldn't give that advice to Jack the Ripper because he was killing people.
It's a real honor to speak to you today. I just want to thank you, first of all, for being part of the soundtrack of my entire life.
Thank you.
You had a lot of interesting friends back in the 1970s. You mentioned Vincent Price and all these others, but could you tell us any stories maybe about Salvador Dali or Groucho Marx?
Yeah, that was, it was interesting how people saw our show. The show was really hard to define because you'd see it and it was a spectacle and you couldn't quite figure out what it was. It was rock and roll, but it was Broadway-ish, but it was also dreamlike and kind of scary, but it was funny. It had all the elements in it. And Groucho came to see the show. And he says, Alice is vaudeville. And so he would bring, Mae West and Jack Benny and people like that. And on the side of the stage, and they'd be watching the show and not be the least bit affected by the scariness of it or any of that. They just kind of like saw it as vaudeville. Now, Salvador Dali came to the show. His interest was piqued by pictures he saw, and he saw it as surrealism. He saw it as like one of his paintings coming to life. Now, what he didn't know was that three of the guys in the band were like, we were art majors. So Salvador Dali was our hero. When he says, well, first of all, you didn't understand a word he said. He would speak in 5 different languages. He would speak one word in Spanish, one in Portuguese, one in Italian, one in French, and one in English. So you'd pick up every 5th word. And even if you knew it, he was talking, he talked like his paintings. It was all surrealistic, So he asked me, he says, I want to do, a moving hologram. And I said, okay. And he said, I want you to be the subject of it. Now, he didn't say it in those words. That was translated to me. And he actually was going to do a hologram where I was sitting in the middle with all these diamonds on, about $5 million in diamonds. And I would be spinning around, and there would be a Venus de Milo statue that I would be using like a microphone. Okay, but it would be moving, and you could put your hand through it. And nobody had ever done, and this is 1971, 72, where nobody had ever seen anything like that. Well, it was about a 4-day shoot. In those 4 days, I had no idea what he was talking about, at all, The first time we met him, was at the St. Moritz Hotel. Shep and I are sitting there, and all of a sudden, like 7 wood nymphs came in, floated in, and we didn't know who these people were, but they were all in chiffon. And then his wife comes in, and she's in a full Fred Astaire tuxedo, spats, cane, top hat, the whole thing. And then the Dali. And he's wearing a giraffe skin coat, pair of blue velvet pants, the Aladdin shoes that go like this, striped socks that Elvis gave him. And he walks in and he goes, "The Dali is here." And we all went, okay. It was like springtime for Hitler, we were like, And he comes in and he sits down and he orders us a scorpion, it was called. And it was a shell with every kind of alcohol you can imagine, an orchid floating in it, right? And you could 2 drinks of this and you were gone. I mean, you were just gone. He pulls out a bottle of honey out of his giraffe skin thing. He pours it in this hot water and he gets this big, long stream. Then he reaches in his pocket and he takes out a pair of scissors and goes, I went, what? Because it was just so, he really was totally surrealistic. So when we did the press conference, they said, "Alice, what was it like working with Dali?" And I went, "I have no idea." I said, I didn't understand a word he said for the whole time. And he says, "Perfect." He says, "Confusion is the best form of communication." I said, "You speak English?" For 4 days, you didn't speak English, and now all of a sudden you speak English? So of course I speak English, And he comes in with this brain one day, this Alice Cooper's brain. He says, "This is the Alice Cooper brain." And it was this plastic brain that he had sculpted with a chocolatey Claire running down the back. And all these ants painted on it that spelled out Dali and Alice. And I said, "Wow." I said, "Can I have it?" And he says, "Of course not. It's worth millions." So he was a puzzle. He was a total puzzle, and I just gave up. I just went, I said, whatever he says, we'll do it. But he was really fun to work with, and he was Salvador Dali. I mean, there was nobody like him. I can't think of, if there was ever an alien on this planet, it was him.
Okay, we only have about 10 minutes left, so we have time for 2 more questions.
Yes, my name is Celeste. I'm a huge fan. I've been listening to you since I was born, practically. Wanted to say thank you for coming to Dragon Con, because when I first found out you were coming, it was like the best news I'd ever heard.
Thank you. Well, I was here 10 years ago, but it wasn't anywhere near this big. I mean, it was one hotel. There's like 9 hotels now.
Highlight of my weekend. But with Alice Cooper being such a theatrical person, what do you think about the costuming aspect of Dragon Con? Like, have you seen a costume that's really impressed you this weekend that you've really enjoyed?
Oh, I see it. This is a place where I feel totally at home. It's like Halloween. When we do a Halloween show, the audience is more outrageous than we are. In fact, that's the one night where we dress like insurance salesmen, No, I feel right at home because I love to see the creativity. I love to see people that really go out of their way and spend time and money on their costume. Because to me, it's an artistic streak that we all have, and that a lot of times we're afraid to let go. I think all of us have an artistic streak, and this gives you the license to tap into it. When you're in a place like this, or if you're at the Mardi Gras, or I try to make Alice Cooper concerts like that, where if you want to be somebody other than yourself, feel free, because I'm doing it. I'm being somebody other than myself, so why shouldn't the audience? So I totally connect with what's going on here. My wife and I sat up in a balcony and the other night had dinner and just watched the parade go by. And she'd go, "Oh, look at that. That's great. What is that supposed to be?" I said, "I don't know what that's." It's a little boy with a box on his head. And I think that's a lobster. I'm not sure. By the way, my wife is here, Cheryl, back over here. We've been married 36. Come here. Just take a bow. Come on. Cheryl was our original ballerina in Welcome to My Nightmare. "36 years, we've never cheated on each other because nobody would have either one of us. But she was 18 years old, and somebody dared her to come down and audition for the Alice Cooper show. And she says, "Who's she?" She had no idea. She was totally classically trained and, you know, Joffrey Ballet and that kind of thing. And so she, just because somebody dared her, she came down and just blew everybody away. The choreographer who was in West Side Story said, "That's our girl right there." You know, and she was by far, you know, the ballerina of ballerinas, and she could also do jazz. I was looking for a ballet for Only Women Bleed, and I said, "I don't need a rock dancer, I need a real ballerina," not knowing that I was going to be my wife for the rest of my life, you know. So, you know, she's still the best ballerina probably in this room. Unless Baryshnikov is here or somebody like that. No, she still teaches, and both of our daughters are ballet, and she's absolutely educated me to ballet and to opera and things that I never would have gone to. She said, "We've got to go to the ballet and the opera this week," and I said, "Okay, then we're going to go see Shriek of the Mutilated." She said, "Okay, let's go." So it's best of both worlds.
And for our final question.
All right. Again, like everyone, I want to thank you for being here and just thank you for you being you, basically. But you already touched on you don't remember writing any of the songs from that blackout era of the couple albums. But the one I was going to ask about writing was I Love America. But since you don't say you remember writing, I'm curious what your opinion on that song is after it, and also why there aren't maybe a few more that are that bizarrely comedic and just it almost doesn't even sound like you, but I love it, so I'm just curious about.
Once we started writing it, you know, you get to periods when you're writing where you don't even think about drinking because you're into something so good that you forget about the crutch that you're using, right? And during that song, we were laughing so hard about this song, I Love America, that I don't think I drank that whole night. I might have been sipping as you, and that's one of the few songs that I absolutely do remember writing. Dick Wagner and Bob Ezrin and I maybe laughed harder than we ever laughed at all, ever in our lives, doing that song. And it came out on tape. It showed up on tape. So, I mean, yeah, that was a little gem that I still play on my radio show every once in a while on 4th of July. Yeah, I'm very proud of that song.
Well, looks like we're just about out of time, but want to thank you all for coming out, and of course thank Alice Cooper for making the trip here.
I appreciate it. Thank you for making us feel right at home. And we'll definitely come back. And I don't understand why they don't do a big concert at the end of this thing with like me and Rob Zombie and Marilyn Manson. Come on.
Thank you.